What was your "I'm not paid enough for this shit" moment? When a customer had a full-blown adult tantrum on the floor of the supermarket I was working at because we were out of red cabbage 2 hours before we closed on Christmas Eve. Mind you that almost everyone eats red cabbage on Christmas here in Germany. To top this off, she also threw frozen bread rolls after me because I told her to have her tantrum outside. So I'm working this register at a truck stop circa 2011. It's by a door that gets very little traffic. So I mostly just watch the gift shop area and try to deter people from stealing. It's an overpass shift about 3 AM. This man comes barreling in, bleeding from his hand, and yells, "I've been stabbed." Immediately I call for security. My manager is nearby. Security calls 911 on their way and shows up a few moments later. This guy is bleeding profusely all over my freshly mopped floor, mind you. I'm off to the side. "So where is the stabber?" My manager is asking for towels, so I bring a clean towel. Again I ask, "Sir, where is the stabber?" My manager and security are saying stuff like, "Put pressure on it. Go wave down the ambulance when they arrive." So at this point I'm practically yelling there is a stabber on the loose in that parking lot somewhere, and I'm not going out there until I know where he is. Finally the guy goes, "Oh, he was at the truck stop across the street. We got into an argument, it wasn't random." Relived, and now no longer fearing for my safety I went out to wave down the ambulance. Unfortunately $8 per hour is not enough to get stabbed over. I worked at a Starbucks in a grocery store and a customer got mad because she wanted a drink cold, but it was served hot. The girl taking her order was new and didn't ask her if she wanted hot or cold. I was making the drinks, so went with what was on the cup. So she threw it at me while still freshly hot. Burned my face down to my stomach. I was 5 months pregnant. I quit a week later. When the boss said he was going to hire Mary back. Mary, the woman who was fired for having her friends call me with death threats because I wouldn't switch days off with her. Mary, the woman he told me he was never in a room alone with because she was the type to claim sexual harassment. He hired Mary back and gave her my job after I quit. He was fired 6 months later over the sexual harassment claim filed by Mary. So if you're familiar with Build-A-Bear, you know the happy faces the employees are supposed to have. You might also be familiar with the bear stuffing process. You pick a bear, bring it to me, pick a heart, and you do a little dance, or whatever else I'd pick. I'd stuff the bear, you put the heart in, and I stitch it up. There was a couple that came in one night in January 2008. She was extremely pregnant. They came in and picked one of the little blue bears. I asked how they want it stuffed, the normal. And then when they pick the heart, oh, they also pick one of the fancy hearts that has a heartbeat. Then tell me that their son, who she is still pregnant with, is going to be stillborn. And they are making a bear together to give to him to be buried with. Obviously, I immediately toned down to the happy-go-lucky bullshit. The store was empty, so it didn't really matter. And no, I didn't make them do the little dance and wish that you do for most people. I finished the bear myself, walked them through the clothing, checked them out myself, and then closed the store. I got written up the next day for not showing the Build-A-Bear spirit. I was 16. I quit and got into a screaming match with that dumb bus manager. I was on a Royal Navy warship and we pulled into Hull, UK for a visit. Their dockyard regulations prevented the ship from discharging solids overboard, so the total of all the crew's toilet flushings were diverted to a holding tank, so we could discharge it overboard when back at sea. After the crew had been in port for 2 days, which for most involved copious drinking, and then finishing off with a large curry or spicy kebab, the additional load on the system was too much for the circulating pump inside tank. The pump was also used to pump the contents overboard, so needed to be fixed before we went back to sea. Unfortunately, I was duty electrician the day the pump failed. The contents of the tank was about 1.5 feet deep. I sweeted up with waterproofs and copious amounts of duct tape to seal the seams and descended. The pump was bolted in place, and to free it, I had to work with my face about 4 inches from the liquid curry and beer smoothies as I bent over. I definitely wasn't getting paid enough. But I was given an order, and it was my job, so I just got on and did it. Was working in a large bakery for my first job at 15. Tried to pull a 6-foot tall baking tray, but there's a lip to get the tray over. Started to fall on me and caught it with my forearms, burning myself. Not terribly, but still not great feeling. Told my boss and showed him my swelling, reddened forearms and asked to go home. He said I could once I'd mopped out the bottom of all the 10 plus freezers, and then he left, leaving me alone. I left as soon as he did and then rode my bike home to take care of my burns. Working for a non-profit. At a fundraising dinner, a major donor touched my knee then later my butt and flirted heavily. I'm a woman and was 25 at the time. When I brought it to my supervisor I was told that is just something you have to put up with when fundraising if you want to make the organization money. Stayed at that job a few months before I was fired for not being happy enough. Note that after that incident I refused to attend events where the creep would be there. Can't say I was sad. Got a job that paid twice as much and came without sexual harassment. An employment lawyer probably would have loved if I called them, but I lack the confidence to take that big of a stand. Now I would absolutely take action. I would actually probably yell in the moment to get your fucking hands off me, which would have been awkward for him because his wife was present. My boss refused to evacuate for Hurricane Ida and somehow managed not to lose power or sustain damage. Everyone around her did. I evacuated with a large group and my complex lost power and water for days. The day after the hurricane hit she demanded we all traverse flooded roads so I could come back and do some things she just didn't have time for. She threw a tantrum over the phone when I told her I wasn't going back to an apartment without power or running water. I'm looking for another job right now. I used to work at a well-known wings and fries chain restaurant as a crew manager, one down of store GM. One afternoon I was talking to some of the literal high schoolers I managed, and they let me know they were making only 50 cents less than I was. These are brand new hires with no experience at all. I was a manager with years of managerial experience and had been working there for a year. The next day I talked to the GM and RM and demanded a raise. Told them I thought it was insulting I made not even $1 more an hour than a new hire as someone who has double or triple the responsibilities and experience that these kids had. They told me that's just how it is. The following week employees were telling me that the GM of the store was talking shit and was thinking of firing me because I lied to her about having double the responsibilities of just a normal employee, even though I pointed out exactly which responsibilities I do on top of just running the store, and the math literally shows over double the responsibilities regular employees were expected to do. I turned in my resignation that night over email and asked for my final 2 weeks to have massively decreased hours. I was a school administrator for a K-12 school. Had a new substitute teacher for a middle school class. She was an older lady, very old school elegant. I'm in the hall and suddenly a class full of 6th graders are running out of the classroom. I go busting in there expecting a brawl or a gun or something. Instead the substitute is standing at the front of the room in a pool of poo. She apologized and said her stomach was bothering her. She walked out of the room and down the hall leaving puddles of poo behind her. I call the custodian and we start with the kitty litter. Thinking my day could only get better, I was shocked when a couple of hours later a student came running down the hall to get me. I follow them to a classroom and there is a sub again, standing in her own poo. Again. The admin assistant had told her earlier that of course she could come back after she got cleaned up. I gently asked her to leave and told her we wouldn't be needing her again. So, the custodian and I cleaned everything up again. When I got home my wife asked me how my day was and didn't understand when I lost it after telling her it had been a shitty day. When I was 16 and worked in a supermarket, I was asked to escort a mentally and physically disabled person around and help him with his shopping. No biggie, I did that quite a lot. This one was very different though. When we went by the clothing section he took a pair of panties and asked me to try them on for him. I was shocked to say the least, but firmly told him that I would not do that and he had better behave like a gentleman or I wouldn't help him anymore. He then proceeded to take off his pants and started masturbating. I don't think I've noped out of anything as fast as I did in that situation. Literally, when I had to pick up someone else's shit. I worked at a beach resort in a spring break town back in the 80s. I was a maintenance supervisor at the time, but the housekeepers were all upset because they weren't about to pick up this huge turd that some jackass left in the gym room shower. They were arguing amongst themselves about it, so I just manned up, grabbed a garbage bag as a glove, took a deep breath, and disposed of it. But I must admit, it was disturbingly large, and when I felt the weight of it, I almost threw up. I took one for the team that day. Like and subscribe for more edit videos.